Welcome, everyone, at this symposium, Making Intangible Heritage Visible, with 7 speakers from 7 different countries here in Europe. I'm very honored that you're here from all around the country, and we have a live stream. People have tuned in from different continents of the world. So very warm welcome to the ones at home listening to us today here in Amsterdam as well. My name is Jacomien Hendriksen. I'm the advisor Europe and Heritage at Dutch Culture, and I am the main organizer of today's symposium and also of the International Visitors Program that's taking place this week. International Visitors Programs are programs that we organize more often as Dutch Culture. Dutch Culture is the organization in the Netherlands for intangible cultural collaboration, for the ones who don't know us. And we organize several visitors programs, but also other events and projects during the year focused on international cultural exchange. And in my case, that is focused on Europe geographically and focused on heritage thematically. And as I said, we have 7 different visitors visiting us this week, and we have a fully packed program from Monday morning to tomorrow afternoon. We visited several Dutch organizations, heritage communities, some of you who are in the room today. Yeah, we actually wanted to share these visitors also with you, with a bit of a broader audience, and to grab the opportunity that they're here in the Netherlands. And this week's International Visitors Program and tonight's symposium is organized together with the Dutch Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage. Most of all, Mark Schep and Suzanne Verburg, who are here with me, and I would like to thank them as well for contributing with a lot of time, knowledge, and network, and everything else. Suzanne.
Yeah, so also a very warm welcome. Is this on? No? Yeah. Now it is. A very warm welcome from us on behalf of the Dutch Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage. As Jacomien said, I'm Suzanne Verburg. I am the coordinator of the research and development team, and together with my colleague Mark Schep, we organized this week. And this visitors program is really important to us because we really value the exchange of knowledge on the subject of intangible heritage. We, as a Dutch Center, implement the convention regarding intangible cultural heritage in the Netherlands. And in doing so, we manage the inventory, for example, of ICH, which is the abbreviation of intangible cultural heritage. You will hear it a lot, I think, because it's such a long term. So ICH, and we do research in this area. But this convention only gives guidelines on how to work on intangible heritage. So every country who is working with this convention does it in their own method, has their own ways of working with communities. So having 7 experts here in the Netherlands is also for us very welcome to learn and to hear how they are doing this in their countries. Before we start the presentations, I wanted to introduce the concept of intangible heritage a little bit more, because many of you are maybe working in museums and not working on a daily basis with ICH. And it includes traditions, social practices, crafts and performing arts, for example, that has been passed on from generation to generation. These cultural expressions are dynamic and community-based. So our first 3 speakers will talk about their experiences with working with these ICH communities. How do they create sustainable and trustful equal relationships with them? And in our second part, our 4 speakers will show how they make this ICH more visible to an audience, to a public, for example. And how do they raise awareness around ICH in a museum or another organization? So, thank you.
Yes, and then I would like to introduce the first speaker. That's Agata Mucha from Poland. You work at the National Heritage Board of Poland in Katowice. and you are the coordinator of Intangible Cultural Heritage in 3 Polish regions, and you're also working on a project called Record of Tradition that makes documents, archives and family collections digitally available. So I'm looking forward to hearing more. Agata.
Hello everybody, I'm very happy I could be here with all of you, and I will try to share my experience in ICH in the field of my country, as Giacomi say, is Poland. Okay, here is, okay. Okay, I work in National Institution of Cultural Heritage in Poland. It is a state institution who was founded by Ministry of Cultural Heritage in my country. We are working in the field of tangible and intangible heritage. As a team of ICH, we are 11 people. 2 people work in our central in capital city in Warsaw, but we also have 9 regional coordinators. One of them is me. Yeah, I work in Województwo Śląskie and Małopolskie and Łódzkie. This is the blue area. As a team, we work. We are advisors and also a researcher in one person. We are participation of application for national intangible cultural heritage of also a register of safeguarding practice with the societies. We are doing identification, also an inventory. We are sharing our knowledge, making a workshop with the societies. This is our daily work. Of course, Poland, as a Netherlands, we have got signed conventions from 2003 in 2011. That's because we have now have our national list of intangible cultural heritage. This month we have got now new elements, and there are 73 in whole country, in whole Poland, and we have got also the safeguarding practices. This is the list which was started up in 2011, and this is 9 practices from all over the world. And how do I work? I work from the last year with 3 regions, and I will start with 2 regions out of the 16. And this is the less than 10% of our country, but there are more than 30% of all entire, because we have got 24 elements inscribed on intangible cultural heritage list. Yeah, because probably we have to remember that the Poland has got displaced lots of people because of Second World War, but my region isn't that area. That's because we have got probably so many inscribed of our intangible cultural heritage. I work probably every day in field. I'm building ties with the local community. I show value outside of society, but also in the society. I am engagement. I use this time to unite and build cooperation with groups, because we have got a similar criteria for our list that the Netherlands, but we have got also one of criteria that is open consultations that we have got to do before we describe element on our intangible cultural heritage list. And this is the time when we have opportunity to build a community with all of the groups from intangible cultural heritage, because one of my elements is carol singing, and this is 27 groups as one element on our national list. I also working and I let the community itself present its heritage, let them and let me experience their heritage, because I know what the problem is by doing that. I don't forget when somebody is on our intangible cultural heritage list on the national level, I always remember about them. I know their problems because I work with them sometimes every day. Yeah. This is my presentation. I work also as a coordinator of European Heritage Days, and I do this with the societies and work with these two files and try to include for example, my craftsmen to this idea, and we are doing a workshop, Open Days, by the European Heritage Day in September. This is a photo which was taken in Bell Foundry in Taciszów, where the family of Felczyński every year has got a group who has this inclusive opportunity to know the Foundry. Also we are working, and now we have got 10th anniversary of our National Intangible Cultural Heritage List, and we are trying to involve the societies to be the part of it, not to be a guest, because they want to present their own identity by it, and working with the groups is for me a pleasure, and I know the problems, and I try to, as a researcher, to improve some programs which will be some kind of solve their problems. And one of this is record of tradition. Is we have started this last year with the together with Center of Social Archives in Poland. It's a new institution, but it's also an institution who is found by our ministry, so we have got strong connections. And the idea is to aim to document, archive, and make available the collections held by depositaries of elements enter on our national list in Poland, because working with them, I know what they have got and what they don't show to the other people, and this is the basics of this idea of this project. And my colleagues from Center of Community Archives have got a really valuable tool. It's a community collection. It's a website where everybody could make an account. It is free and have to archive their documentary with the rules of our archivistics. So it is a very nice tool, and also it is very nice tool for our project, because society could add an account, so it's for free, can archive their document, but they can choose then what type of documents they want to show to the public. So we have got preserved the documentary, but they have a possibility to show only part of it, or also can show only a list. What do they have, and when somebody is interested in it, they can contact them. When they know what they use it for, they can give it or don't. So this is very, very important, especially when we are talking about crafts, because it's very in the basic of law. Important, and our idea is to carry it out by local communities that they describe their own traditions and sources of identity by showing their own archival material. So I think this is very, very ethical way to do it, because they do it by themselves and they inscribe this. And this is one of our first workshop in Żywiec last year in the spring. Also, we have know what are the problems of the community, because we have got a questionnaire when they can help us to build this program. Because when I started, I was thinking, oh, this is a problem. Then I asked the society, yes, this is a problem, we want a solution. And then I start to working with this topic. Here, a photo which one of our participants in first workshop have taken when he is riding to the shepherds' families. We are trying to build competence like a digitalization, also a recording, oral story. That is the two topics that we are working with the societies right now. Now will be only a few photos. How did it look like? This is our second workshop in session in winter last year. And this is some of examples. What do we have back from this workshop? This is part of collections of Leśniak family. This is family of toy makers in Stryszawa. This is Mr. Tadeusz on the first photo. This is his family archive. We have also make interviews with toy makers, but they do this by themselves to talk to each other. So this is also a very value thing and very correlated to the conventions of UNESCO. This is also photo scanned of the project by the shepherds' societies. And this is something unusual because riding to these families, Mr. Józef found a diary of shepherds who was laying in a back house, because in our national park in Tatry there was forbidden for sometimes for several years to go with the ships, and when in 1981 the park have allowed 2 or 3 shepherds to go back with the ships, they put this note, and everybody, also tourists or also local communities, have to can write why do they think that the back of the ship and why are they important in the landscape, also in the national park. So this is very value and very interesting material doing by themselves. So this is how do I try to work, and how do I try to work with the communities. Yeah, thank you very much.
And we have time for questions after the first 3 presentations, so at the end of the first part of the symposium. Now I would like to ask Claudio to give his presentation. Claudio Gnesi is director of Ecomuseo Casilino in Rome, in Italy, and a civic activist, and he will tell more about his institution.
So, I would like to thank you first of all, Jacomini, Jana, every member of the staff, the Dutch Culture Center of Intangible Heritage, for this invitation, because I'm very honored to be here. So I come from Rome, not from the postcard of Rome that everybody knows, but from a very distant outskirt from the center of Rome. And in my Rome English, I'm trying to describe how we work with communities and how we deal with cultural heritage, intangible cultural heritage. So, first of all, where we are. As you see in the red circle, we are in the eastern part of Rome, and the red shape represented the old territory we live. Rome is divided in 14 municipalities, and we deal with the fifth municipality. As you can see, we have a huge population and a large presence of migrants. But the Ecomuseum is not the whole municipality. It's a smaller part. It's the yellow part, and the population is still dense, but the population of the migrants is rising up. Is very huge. So why? Why we are doing an Ecomuseum in this place in Rome, in this place of Rome, in this specific part of Rome? We are doing this because this territory is the second in archaeological importance in Rome. But the strange thing is that nobody knows it, and from the Second World War was totally marginalized and was forgotten. The reason, we have many reasons about these things, but the main reason is because it's a place of migrants. So it's like an internal racism from the city of Rome, from the city center of Rome, that decided to put outside the wall, in that part of Rome, all the people that they doesn't like. Migrants, politicians, everybody can create problems, are put there, okay? So the heritage, the territory, everything becomes a B side, a B class part of Rome. So in the same year of this photo, we are in 1960. The people doesn't have the water in the house. In the same years, in the Appia Antica, that is really near our territory, was a really huge fight with academics, politicians that want to protect the Appia Antica because it's fundamental, it's fantastic, it's important. Okay. And in the same age, in our territory was starting a new building project that will raise and destroy all the archaeological heritage. That's the difference. But our archaeological heritage, I give you a news, is more important than the one of the Appia Antica, but nobody knows it. And that's the reason why it's important to highlight that probably we don't have a sponsor in Rome. Appia Antica has a sponsor, Aduas Lauros has no sponsor, and that's the reason why we are totally forgotten. This process started in the age of fascism, during Mussolini, because the city needs a large amount of space where amass people that are not desired. Okay? So we have a huge space, we can make real estate speculation, we can make a lot of money, and we can push undesired people there. Okay? That's the logic of all the intervention. 20 years ago, the citizens rise up and decided that this fate is not more possible. We can change things. We can change everything. And demand attention, protection, and sustainable development. An heritage community was born in that period because this community asked to respect the territory, to respect the heritage of the territory, to respect the community that lives there. It was a small revolution, okay? So this heritage community stops all the speculation and decide to create an urban ecomuseum. But which kind of urban ecomuseum? They don't want to create a building with someone inside that recounts the territory. They want to musealize the whole territory. So our ecomuseum doesn't have a building. We work in the street, we work in the park, we work in the square. We share spaces with the association, with community of practice, to do event, to do exhibit. So we stay inside the community, and all the members of the ecomuseum live in this territory. How we do this? Musealizing the territory. The whole territory is a museum for us. There is no wall. Every street, every corner, every bar, everything is museum. And we do it with a collective way, working with the people from all over the world, because actually we are the most international part of Rome. We create a scientific committee made by the people that live the territory and that have competences, anthropologists, urban planners, historian, I don't know, you understand, art curator, etc. We create an association of citizens. Actually, the association is made up by 50 people, active people, but the extended circle arrived to 1,000 people. Co-creating the heritage map of the territory. We create the basis of the Ecomuseum, the community map. The community map is the map of all the things that the people that live the territory understand and perceive like representative of their story, their identity, their heritage. And then we co-create a development model based on culture, because the third legs we need in our territory, that it was very economically depressed, that we need to create work, we need to create development, we need to create something that people can use to have an income, to give the food to the kids. Now the Ecomuseo Casolino is recognized by the Lazio region as a local institution. So we are an institution now. We started like a protest movement, now we are an institution, but we still feel like an heritage community. Ecomuseo and ICH. Do you remember? We are all migrants since ancient times. This history of migrants have created a palimpsest of intangible cultural heritage. Is enormous, it's huge, it's fantastic, and it's a really new palimpsest that is largely underestimated by the academics and the experts. So, all the type we have actually. We have detected now, but we have just started. How we deal? We support the community, to local communities, to safeguarding the heritage in practical way. We assist them to authorization, to find the places, to find everything they need to perform, to practice, to do what they want to do. And obviously to assist them to get conscious that they are a community of practice, because they don't feel like this. They don't feel that they are a community that create intangible heritage. So we support them to understand these things. And we support this, we are starting to catalog the inventory, helping them to understand the things and propose for the listing. How we do this? We do training especially the young people to be ambassador, to be a person that understand the importance of what they are doing and the importance to be a community, an heritage community. And we are starting to meet the community in school throughout stories, because all the community recounted the stories of the other communities, so we create a new narration of the territory, and all the communities knows the story of the Bangladeshi community knows the Italian story, so everybody can interpret it and can recount this story. Fine is the last one. We engage the city, and we engage the city with the member of the community. We obviously lead guided tours, we make seminars, etc. But we are assuming people inside our organization, and actually we have 3 or 4 tours, like the one we are going to do this Saturday, that was leading by a person that lives the territory that we are going to describe. So all the people, only the people that lives the territory can recount the territory that are going to expose. Grazie, and I'm here for your question, everything you want. I'm for you.
Thank you very much, Claudio. And now on to the third presentation on this topic of working with communities by Matti Hakamaki from Finland. Matti, you are the director of Finnish Folk Music Institute and you teach folk music. You are also the chair of the Nordic and Baltic ICH network and the chair of the Promotion Center for Finnish Folk Music and Folk Dance. So, yeah, welcome.
Yes, hello all. Very honored to be here, and thank you for the invitation to the Dutch Culture and Dutch Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage. These have been very nice days, and I now try to present some examples and experiences from Kaustinen that we have heard from, that we have learned from community involvement, and especially through this UNESCO inscription process that we have been working with for last maybe 5 years. So I'm director of Finnish Folk Music Institute, and we work all around Finland, not only in this Kaustinen place, but this Kaustinen, on the other hand, it's very rich in the folk music, folk dance culture, and it has been kind of the center of the Finnish folk music scene for many decades, and actually even centuries, you could say. And there was a folk music festival, 68, that was established there, and through that, even the newer generations know Kaustinen in Finland as a folk music place. About the local heritage that we have. So in 2021, the local Kaustinen fiddle playing was inscribed to the list of representative list of UNESCO, of the Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage. And it is a living culture. In everyday life, it's very vivid in a small place where we have about 4,000 people in the central community or the municipality, but also surrounding communities and municipalities. It's about 5,000, 6,000 people living there, but it's very rich with the folk music and music practicing, dance. It's kind of the air that the communities breathe. It runs in families and in villages, and it has done so from generation to generation for many 300 years, maybe 200 years, and it still continues. And this is very rare in the Western world, to have these kind of local folk music communities where the tradition is still going on. Of course, changing all the time, like it should be. And this is the picture of the folk music festival, which has been from 68. And then also some kind of facts about the tradition. So it was based before on the wedding traditions, and the idea that music was a big part of the wedding traditions. So the wedding traditions kind of kept it alive. But then when world changed and the weddings didn't have any more that kind of role, then the festival came, and it was very good thing for the local community, for the local traditions, because it kind of took the place of the wedding institution. So nowadays the festival, it's the biggest folk music festival in Nordic countries. It lasts for 1 week. It's in the second week of July. So that kind of gives the schedule for all the communities, all the bands, all the groups, all the players, dancers, local practitioners to practice and rehearse and so on. And that's kind of the main event of the year, and that kind of that's where the heritage is kind of the where everybody aims. That's the festival idea. So we have about 200 players, 200 dancers. These are very low estimates. Actually, there are almost 200 dancers, children dancers and youngster dancers that we have that rehearse every week, and also about more than 100 children and youngsters who practice playing every week. And so this is kind of the local tradition of the Kaustinen fiddle playing. And then there is situated our organization, Finnish Folk Music Institute, and our aim is kind of nationwide to promote the livelihoods of these local traditions. And we have been existing for 50 years almost now, and we have been always working with the grassroots practitioners. We called them more like amateurs. We didn't use the word a practitioner back then, but when now you look at the activities that we did and we have done, they were actually very grassroots based and community based. But we were working with museums, archives, as we still do, with publications, education, different domains, different kind of ways to work with heritage. But about 10 years ago, we heard about this strange thing, intangible cultural heritage, and the UNESCO Convention. And we were a little bit kind of in the beginning, at least I was against of this. I thought that no, it's another thing that we have to do. We have been doing good work for many years, so we don't need it. But then little by little, when our organization and the communities, they got to know the convention better, then we realized that this is actually exactly the things that we want to do. And there is actually some things that they are thinking better through this convention and through these ideas of intangible cultural heritage. So since then we've been very, very eager to learn more and network more, especially through these ideas of the convention and ideas or the framework of intangible cultural heritage. And since then, within the Finnish Folk Music Institute, we have been trying to focus on our archive work, in our museum work, in publications, in education, always through these approaches. It used to be more focused on historical, kind of the history giving value to the tradition, and then aesthetic systems giving value to the heritage. But these are kind of the things that we now try to think that these things give value to the actual heritage. And this is always what we should focus in all of our work that we do. So community approach, idea that it's living, changing heritage. There is an idea of cultural diversity, so no one culture can be better than the other one or more beautiful. And then human rights, sustainable development, and then idea of actively safeguarding. And through the process, we worked with the local practitioners, and it was inscribed to 21, and it was maybe 18 that we started to work with actually the inscription or the inscription files, and we got the local organizations together. And these organizations who were grassroots organizations, practitioners, and we formed a working group that met every 1 month, and we were talking about the safeguarding plans and why should we do this application and so on. And we applied some project funding, we did international benchmarking, thinking about the safeguarding, idea of safeguarding the local, and also the communication with state parties. But especially the community approach, what we did in this about 2 years period with the file, it included questionnaires, interviews, informal and formal meetings with the community. So there were 40, 30 different meetings that we had in the local musicians' rehearsals, for example, telling and asking, what do you think about this UNESCO listing? Should we do it or not? And then if they said no, then we won't do it. And kind of giving the message that it's your application, it's not the expert's application. We had workshops, awareness raising just in public places, newspapers, and different projects, education, research, safeguarding. So just very, kind of like a very big thing, trying to put it in a nutshell. What we have learned, what would be kind of the biggest things that we think that we have learned from these experiences, especially this UNESCO inscription process, and how to work with communities, what is important. And a few lessons, or maybe the main findings of our works have been that community involvement, it's not just like having an idea and then going to the community and tell it to them and take them with you at that point. But community involvement means really that you have to take the communities with you in the planning phase. And you have to give the power to the communities to say no. So even though if your organization has a great idea, UNESCO listing or whatever, and the community, you always have to give the community a chance to say that no, we don't want to go there. And this, when you have this idea, then it's really community involvement. So you have to take the communities with you in the very, very beginning planning phase. And this is, it sounds very easy, but actually in real life, we very often, our kind of the expert people working with heritage, we already kind of have the idea where the communities should, the box that they should fit, and then we try to fit them there. But the idea is really the plan, the whole platform with the communities, so that we know what kind of boxes there should be. So maybe this would be the main message or main findings from Kaustinen. Thank you.
Thank you, Matti, for this lesson. Also, very practical tip, I think, for everyone here in the audience. Now we have time for questions. I'm very much aware that 10 minutes is really short for your presentations. Also, during the previous days, we've chatted a lot with the visitors, and they all said that they could talk for days about their work. So go ahead with your questions, and maybe they can try to answer some. Any questions yet? Oh.
Thank you. I'm Jesse Dibbits from the Rijnrad Academy, and thank you so much for your wonderful contributions, stories, insights. I was wondering, and maybe now I'm sort of ruining a party, or but I'm always sort of looking for tension or conflict or issues, and I can imagine that there were several challenges in your work as well, and tensions also within the communities you work with or you are part of. Could you share a bit about these challenges or tensions?
Is this a question to all three?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to repeat it very briefly for the people who are listening on the live stream. So there's a question, what kind of tensions where there are in the communities that you worked with, or did you see any tensions? Could you please stand up and answer on the microphone if you want? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Very important point. In our case, of course, there were a lot of tensions, and that's always, it should be like that, because we are human beings and we are communities. Maybe just to bring one important thing to the discussions is kind of how you define community. It's a group of people, and like from our experience, what we first started defining the community, asking them that, what do you think that is a community? And then we had a community. And then after that, we go like, what's the name of the heritage? And then the community agrees that, okay, this is the name of the heritage or the element. But then we ask the question, what's the community behind this element? Then the community is different. So kind of where to put the borderlines when you talk about the communities. I think that's kind of a long debate that you have to have. And there are some kind of challenges always there. There are different opinions. But in my opinion, then you just have to talk so long that everybody gets tired of talking. And then you normally have some kind of consensus. But yeah, it's not always like that.
Okay, so about the community, I think in our case sometimes there is a problem because we are doing very often the inscriptions that are working with lots of different communities, and sometimes there is a one community who is stronger than the other, and my duty is to talk to them and try to do that the element will be equal for each other, that they don't feel that they are used, or there are, especially with the name of the element. This is also very, very important, because sometimes I have got example from my last month meeting. They were about painting, and there are a couple of villages, but one village has got most of the artists, and they want to name the element with the name of the village. Then we have got to talk how to do it without this, and try to collaborate and making an union with these communities. This is probably a problem. Also, sometimes there is a problem when sometimes call and ask me to help who isn't the part of the community, and who think that he knows that it should be inscribed on the list, and he thinks that he knows how would be name this element. So this is also a different problem. The people outside of the communities who wants to sometimes even takes advantage of the ICH in this area. So this is two topics. Yeah, and this is sometimes very hard, but I'm trying to collaborate, and and this is I don't have a bad experience. Always we have got a solution that is good for everybody.
Quite a lot of mediation actually then as part of your work.
Yeah, the mediation is the keywords, obviously. And another thing that we have learned by the experience is to try to transform the conflict in a part of the heritage. An example was 2 years ago, was finishing the COVID, and we have two different Durga Puja events, but two different temples that are struggling. Mine is the best one. Yeah, mine is the best one. I want to do in that. I want to make it in that square. No, that square is mine, etc. A very, very, very conflict. We ask them to make a sort of competition in the community of Bangladeshi people, say to solve the situation throughout a game, because they play it's cricket, so they make a cricket game. One win, and now actually the cricket game is a part of the process of the construction of the Durga Puja event inside our district. It was a solution that obviously is not possible in all the context, but sometimes our duty is to be creative, to try to not only to mediate at the bottom level, but to mediate at the higher level. To try to dare this community to do something more, to solve the problem, to find the situation, to find solution by themselves, and sometimes it works. This time it works.
Thank you. Any other questions? Esteban.
Thank you. Question for Agatha? Hi, Agatha. I'm Nienke. I work for the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision. Fantastic work that you're doing at the National Institute. But I was wondering, all the stories, all the objects that you are putting together on this website, how do these stories also, are they reusable for others? And are you making them available to libraries or archives or museums more broadly than on this wonderful platform that you have? And is that the role of your institute that you work for, or is that out of the scope of your activities?
Yeah, I'm going to reply say it a second time again. Very briefly, a question on Agatha's project with the digital platform, and where are these sources made available as well, only on your platform or on other platforms as well?
this is the first phase of this project, and they are only on the internet. But we are thinking when we collaborate much more of these histories of this element, because now we have got only 2 pilots, and they have involved 8 of 73 elements of our list. So we are working with Centrum of Social Archivistics because they have got a tool which is a basic on this level. But we were thinking, in the about 2-3 years to do maybe separate thing, and working with this what we have got from this project and the societies about, I don't know, maybe some kind of podcast, maybe some to use it more visually. But now is the basic when we are trying to collect as many as we can, and then we will be probably also working with the communities. We have got this. How do you want to do it? What do you want to do it with this? Because I don't, when I doing everything, I always send or email or chat with my communities with the questionnaire. What do they want? What do they think? Do they can input to something project? Is it value for them? Because I have got a lot of work, and if I want to do another project, I want to do something that they need. But in that phase, this is only a database. But we're thinking about the future, and I think that we would do much more with these files.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Hello, I'm Deepika. I come from India, but I have been in the Middle East for a year now. I have a question for Matti, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. You mentioned that there are about 200 plus musicians in the area that the drummers. Isn't there, I'm just curious, is being a musician their primary profession? And are they able to earn a livelihood out of it? Or is it something that they do on the side just to practice the tradition?
A question for Matti on the number of 200 musicians, whether they are professionals or amateurs, practitioners, or...
It's a very, very good question, and important as we define like a Kaustin and fiddle playing practitioner. There are all other instruments also included, and other kind of roles in the heritage. But of course, the fiddle playing is kind of the symbolic thing that the community itself wanted to be lifted into the topic of the nomination. So the fiddle playing is kind of in the central part, in the focus. But then again, in the folk music scene, especially today, there are kind of 2 different levels. It's the professional level, which is very possible, and we also promote the professional folk music playing and practicing. But then there is this kind of amateur level that they have some other, they don't regard it as themselves as professionals. Even though they play a lot, they might do it a lot, but that's kind of the self-identification thing. But there is everything. There is professionals that are very known in the whole of Finland, like from the classical music. They do an occupation that's totally different from the traditional music, but then they have the roots in the community, so they also know the local tradition, and they are very professional. But then they are very amateur practitioner-likes, and it's very hard to say like what percentage, because everybody is kind of an individual. And there is this relationship of these ideas. So the concept of kind of professional musician, it is a little bit hard in this context.
Anyone else? Or, okay, I guess we'll take a really, really short break. You can go to the restroom if you want, that's upstairs, or get some water in the back. But please stay close, because we will start within 5 minutes, I guess, with the next part and with the next 4 speakers. So see you in 5 minutes. Thank you.
je erbij horen ook?
Sorry.
Niet bij de...
Patricia. I will first briefly introduce the topic in 2 sentences. Where's Patricia? Kan jij even appen waar Patricia is? Kan jij er even appen? Ja, of Jana even appen of zo. Okay, then we will start the second part of our symposium on a topic that has a little bit of a different focus, the focus of visibility. So how to make intangible heritage visible, because intangible heritage, of course, is part of society. Many heritage organizations, maybe the ones you're working for, are working on bringing intangible heritage closer to the public and to stimulate the safeguarding by doing research, making an inventory, making it visible in museums or digitizing it. And we will hear 4 examples. The first is from Sara Gonzalez. She's from Spain. She did a PhD in the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage in Spain, and she works as an anthropologist at the Institute of Cultural Heritage of Spain, that is part of the Ministry of Culture and Sports. So, Sarah, I'm looking forward. You're already there? I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jacqueline. Well, first of all, I want to thank Dutch Culture and the Dutch Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage for having us, for the invitation to participate in this symposium, and also to the organization for the kind and efficient work. Well, in addition to the transformation of the concept of cultural heritage due to the approach to the anthropological concept of culture, in Spain there's a rather particular situation at the level of internal organization. In the Spanish state there are some powers exercised by the autonomous communities, the regions, and others belong solely to the general state administration where I work. In the case of intangible heritage, there are 17 regional administrations and 1 central administration with its own powers and laws, so it was necessary to build a tool that unified the criteria and work methodologies, which were certainly disparate at the time of ratification of the convention by Spain in 2006. The national plans for cultural heritage are management and coordination tools between the Spanish state, the regions, and other public and private entities, which from an interdisciplinary manner try to establish the criteria, methodologies, and lines of action necessary for safeguarding the cultural heritage. Since the first for cathedrals in 1990, 14 national plans for cultural heritage have been generated. The national plan, or the ICH national plan, has a general objective, the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage, and in addition it has 4 specific objectives and methodologies. The first is to establish agree theoretical basis on the concept, characteristics, areas, and so. Prepare projects relating to the identification, documentation, dissemination, and promotion. Raise awareness in society and achieve institutional recognition in the framework of cultural policies, and facilitate information between administrations since the mostly in our case, the treatment of this type of cultural heritage needs so it's proposed in cooperation with regions and other private and public entities. And well, what does the National Plan designed by ICH? We use the 2003 Convention definition after our ratification in 2006, but in any case, the importance of the ICH, as we understand it, does not lie in the cultural manifestation itself, but in the wealth of knowledge and techniques that are transmitted from generation to generation, as we will see in an example. The National Plan proposes a series of characteristics that can serve to identify intangible cultural heritage in the Spanish context, and in the same way, the National Plan expanded and detailed a bit the 5 areas of development that the Convention proposed. We're going to talk about the programs of the National Plan. And it proposes 3 programs that frame various lines of action. They detail the most suitable methodologies for the development of projects. The first is for research and documentation, as it's the most urgent and important measure for the safeguarding of ICH with the participation of the host communities. And for these reasons, there were the priority projects within the framework of the plan, the research about the cultural manifestation, especially those works that cross-affect various regions or for manifestations that are in any risk. The plan also proposed the 4 fundamental tools for the adequate investigation and documentation of manifestation. The second program is for tangible heritage conservation, as the ICH is interconnected with materiality in a direct way, since it's the physical support for the body of the discourses, and the institution that often works these assets, like museums, archives, documentation centers, must be aware of the symbolic value that these supports present and the particularities of their conservation. And as we set ourselves the challenge of making intangible cultural heritage visible, let me explain the last program in a bit more detail. The National Plan organizes the lines of action of the program for transmission, promotion, dissemination, based on the agents whose mission and commitments include spreading the knowledge about ICH. Starting with community participation, obviously, that is suggested that the development of participation strategies will not be only limited to consultation sessions, but that involve the active presence of the groups in dissemination actions, both at the level of the communities themselves and their respective formal cultural organizations. Museums also often generate knowledge about the processes, particularities and messages of the ICH associated with their collections. And the methodology should favor the coexistence between the internal and external vision, presenting the object simultaneously as an artistic object and as support of meanings. In the case of tourism, taking into account that there's a risk linked to non-sustainable tourism, the plan proposes 2 lines of action for 2 types of ICA assets, artisan goods and collective rituals, which need kind of different approaches, and especially about little-known cultural practices. The National Plan offers a series of guidelines for mass media, among which the need for contextualization, the rethinking of stereotypes, and the guarantee of respect of the population, or the motivation of the dissemination for the community itself. I took a specific project made on the framework of the National Plan, the Plan for the Safeguarding of the Esparto Culture. The Esparto culture in Spain is an identifying and representative intangible heritage, but in a situation of extreme vulnerability. The Esparto landscapes, as you can see in the image, are the result of a prolonged interaction between the Esparto communities and the diverse ecosystems since the Paleolithic period. This plant is capable of fixing and forming new soils in semi-arid spaces, which we have in Spain, stopping erosion processes and acting as natural barriers against desertification. The Esparto communities form a rich and diverse society over time, generating a wide variety of specific traits. And in the past they were united, but today those communities are permeable and quite dispersed. Dedicating yourself to Esparto was synonymous with poverty and sacrifice, but currently its protagonists seek to dignify the trade, claiming the public recognition and their valuable contribution on the cultural, social, economic, and environmental fields. In the context of technological and economic globalization and an unprecedented climate crisis, the ICH of Esparto Graz, still alive, presents a quick deterioration. It was urgent to implement the strategies of the safeguard plan due to the advanced age of the people who can still transmit their knowledge. The interest is fourfold. First, cultural, because its manifestation must be considered ICH. Economic, because it's likely to generate benefits and economic developments for artisans and companies. Social, because it makes it possible to stimulate employment in rural areas and in a global framework favors the development of professionals in the place of origin. And environmental, because taking care of Esparto helps to fight against the effects of desertification and global warming. Now, the plan for the safeguarding of the Esparto culture published by my home institute, you can find it online, pursues the survival of the Esparto ICH related to domestic and professional spheres in its institutional recognition and the conservation of its traditional knowledge. To achieve these objectives, we have several strategies made up of 25 actions and 110 activities, among which are research, training, articulation of a fair trade market, didactic materials, and so on. And well, in addition to the numerous dissemination actions, the dozens of projects carried out within the framework of this national plan as the best speaker of the principles and values, technical assistance and financing for ICH inventories, specific projects on various topics such as the role of women on ICH, or projects to disseminate the ICH like educational resources, photographic exhibitions. And well, for the national plan, it's a pride to be able to collaborate with other states in our safeguarding of cultural heritage. And although our contexts are different, the problems we face are sometimes common, so we greatly appreciate the opportunity to share this journey with such relevant colleagues from all over Europe. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Now from Spain, we move further up north to Belgium. I would like to ask Freya to give the next presentation. Freya van Krijnest works at Historisch in Flanders, Belgium, where she studies intangible cultural heritage from the 3rd UNESCO domain, focused on festivals, rituals, and social practices. And she supports tradition bearers and practitioners in her work. She's also involved in heritage as a practitioner herself.
Hello everybody, thank you Jacqueline for the introduction. Thank you also for the beautiful week we are having. It's been a blast up so far, so I'm glad that I can give some extra information on what we do in Belgium. Of course, in Belgium or in Flanders, it's a situation I'm going to talk about. There's a lot of things happening on making intangible heritage visible. So I had to pick a little focus because 10 minutes is not that long. So if I miss something, please don't be offended. Maybe you can ask me some things later on during the drinks maybe. But my focus is going to be on what we do at Historisch. But of course, we are part of a bigger ICH network in Flanders. We have an organization like Keen in the Netherlands, also in Flanders, which coordinates everything over the 5 domains of UNESCO, and we have different players on the different domains as well. So we are only playing a small part in a bigger thing of making intangible heritage more visible. Now, as I already said, I'm working at Historis, and Historis is actually a service heritage organization. So we are funded by the Flemish government, and actually have a focus on heritage volunteers, which is actually a quite broad understanding on a group of people. In our case, we focus on them because they are focused on the ones, unlike professionals, who dedicate their free time to taking care of heritage. It's out of a passion, out of the heart for the heritage that they do it, and that's the group of people that we want to focus on. In our definition of a volunteer, we also include the ICH practitioners and the tradition bearers, specifically on the third domain. So that's on the festivities, social practices, and the rituals. Our goal for everything that we do is to empower those volunteers. And also in case of visibility, which is a topic here today, is we want to support them, guide them, give them some extra tools so they can make themselves more visible. Because we believe that if we support them, they will support the heritage. So that's the whole philosophy of what we do. Of course, everything, the keyword of today should be bottom-up and not top-down. So that's also the thing that we do. So we focus on those co-creative processes, which is also very participatory, of course, so those who are linked. The guidance and the support that we provide, we do that with a variety of tools that we have in our toolkit, which is actually just a screenshot for our website. This is the homepage, where you can see the different things that we offer. First of all is courses, which is very tailor-made to the specific needs of volunteers. In case of visibility, it's going to be a course on how you can use social media or how you can connect to younger people to make the ICH more approachable for them. The second thing that we do, and that's actually the thing that I do most, is what we do with the ICH wow, difficult word. The ICH practitioners is the co-creative processes. It's actually tailor-made advice and support that we provide, and most of the time it is linked to a trajectory towards a placement on the ICH inventory in Flanders. What we also do is provide publications, both digital and online on our website, digital and online, and also on paper if they like. We also have databases, which I will show one later on in the presentation. And also we have some extra projects, mostly around some certain themes, also to promote visibility of the work that volunteers do, or the work that volunteers can do in bigger projects like academic research projects and other things like that. So a few examples, and I'm going to start immediately with a few pictures where I'm on it. It's not because I'm so vain, but it's because I think it's important that we are that we are part of the practitioners and what they do. So the whole idea here in this process with the historical shooting guilds is actually a group of people, a community, a heritage community. It's a very diverse group, geographically spread all over Flanders, but also in the Netherlands and other parts of Europe. Is started in 2017. They wanted to be on the national inventory, which is a big goal for them because it took a long time. So we have a big process, long-term engagements, and it's still going on. So in 2019, they were placed on the national inventory, and until up to date, we're still working with them towards the sustainable safeguarding of their traditions. So it's a process, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. So that makes me understand what they really need, what they really want, what they can achieve, what is maybe a bit too difficult to achieve right now and should be postponed until later time. So it's a very tailor-made process. Something else that we do is we try to voice concerns that volunteers or the ICH practitioners face in their daily work or their daily life, especially if it's not a coincidence that it's a COVID example, because a lot of practitioners suffered also from the COVID restrictions. So we had museums being closed, but of course volunteers also couldn't practice what they really love to do. So here we had some, instead of saying how bad it was for them, we tried to focus on the positive, and we tried to heighten or put a limelight on the inspirational practices. So we made a podcast, and one of the episodes was with Giant Culture in Antwerp, and they did something really funny with mouth masks, as you can see on the photo. But they also decided to come to the people instead of the people coming to them, because that wasn't possible. So it's very inspirational. So we made a podcast out of it, so it could be heard and seen by everybody who was struggling. There's a little message of hope, accompanied by some tips and tricks. So Historis, this is some other episodes. They're all on our website. Historis at this point is kind of a platform, so everybody can find the practices that people are doing. It's also something that we do in our monthly newsletter. We include testimonials of ICH practitioners, not always ICH practitioners, sometimes there are other volunteers, but the idea is that they can tell what they do. So it's very approachable as well. A broad audience can learn more about the practitioners and what they do in their daily life, what their passion is about. This is one on the fairground culture, which is also now in the process of making a UNESCO filing together with France. Some other things that we do is we try to do some our own research. So we have a lot of research going on the third domain and the traditions included. And we want to show it to the on our website to a bigger audience. So it's not just for ICH enthusiasts, but also people who celebrate Christmas or are interested in what is Holi or Diwali. So it's a whole idea of sharing the information and make it more visible. We completely turned it around, this database. It's quite old yet already. So we actualized it completely, and now we included also the voice of the the ICH practitioners themselves. So we added the category overdragers, which is the icon you can see on the right. It's actually literally transmitting something to someone else, transmitting, and this is an example of it. So we have the grieving culture in Flanders, the 1st and 2nd of November, but this is a whole new take on it. It's the founder of Réveil, which is an organization who wanted to make a bit more of a festival again, instead of the silent, grey, sad happening that it was before. So it's a good addition to the database. Something else that we do is actually a quite recent project. We're doing it with a bigger ICH network in Flanders, so it's not just histories. Yeah, I'm again in the picture, I'm so sorry. It was a candid photo. The video maker didn't know I was there, so it was a bit of a joke. But the idea here is that we really want to put a face on the craftsmanship that is also in the third domain. So it's a bigger project. We're doing it with all the other players, so it's all around the 5 domains of the convention. And the idea is that we document it, and that the result of it is going to be shown in a broad way. So we are going to do it, but it's also going to become on our platform site where also the inventory can be found. So it's a bigger project on showing ICH. In our case, it's also interesting because we want to make shown that is also, there's also a lot of craftsmanship on the third domain of UNESCO. Immediately, craftsmanship thinks to domain 5, but it can also be domain 3, so it's also some kind of awareness that there is craftsmanship all over the UNESCO convention. It's still ongoing, by the way, so the movie will be expected at the end of the year. There will be a congress as well on it, and there is also going to be a toolkit on how we can teach the communities themselves to also document their craftsmanship. So it's not everybody has the budget to hire a professional filmmaker, so that's a solution to that. And then last, but I think not least, is also we have the bigger ICH network, of course the different thematic players, but we also try to include network events or network topics, teachable networks on different thematic topics where we also include the communities themselves. So this is a structural partnership. It's going to be 10 years that we already do things like this together. So it's Histories together with 2 other professional organizations, which is Parcum, is also a museum, and we have CADOC, which is also an archive, and we come together with all our different expertises to support and to guide the professional, as a professional way of supporting the processional communities who take care of processions. So op handen gedragen means carried. You can see it in the pictures. So the idea here is that we have those network moments where we can also enhance the visibility of processional culture and let them find each other in creating extra awareness about processional culture, the challenges they face. Again, also learning from each other about tips, tricks, things they like to learn more for, and stuff like that. So it's one of the thematic networks that we have. I could go on and on and on, but this is the last slide. So I think if there are questions, maybe you can ask them later, or I can share some more during drinks. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Indeed, there's time for questions after your 4 presentations, and then there's networking drinks where we hope you will join us. It's still raining outside here in Amsterdam, so. But first, 2 more presentations. Next is Jacob O'Sullivan from Scotland. Jacob is Museum Development Manager with Museums Galleries Scotland, the national development body for the museums and galleries sector in Scotland. And Jacob manages the approach to safeguarding and promoting ICH across the museum sector in Scotland, as well as providing support for museums and galleries more generally. So I'm looking forward to your presentation on visibility of ICH.
Thank you very much. Hi all, thank you so much. Just to reiterate what everybody said, just thank you so much for inviting us over. It's been absolutely brilliant. Learned so much, and just a pleasure to meet everybody on the program as well. It's been great. And I keep saying that Amsterdam is my favourite city in the world, so I mean it. It's one. Actually, it was second favourite on Monday, so it's gone up in the world. I should say as well that I feel very embarrassed and lucky that I think I'm the only speaker doing this in my first language, but I can't promise to be any more articulate or anything, so we'll see how it goes. But thank you all for listening. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work of Museums Galleries Scotland, and also, I suppose, the situation of intangible cultural heritage within Scotland, and how we've utilised a themed year through the Scotland Year of Stories project, which was a way of us kind of reinvigorating how we support communities and museums. And I'm going to look at a few examples of where this has been quite successful with some of the projects that we funded. But just a bit of a background as to the work of Museums Galleries Scotland. So we are one of only a few key partners in the Intangible Cultural Heritage Partnership within Scotland. So other members include Traditional Arts and Culture Scotland, who kind of manage approaches to storytelling, dance and music. Historic Environment Scotland, who look after landscapes. Creative Scotland, who manage kind of artistic approaches. And then there's Museums Galleries Scotland, who we're here to really support all the museums and galleries and how they work with communities. We get Museums Galleries Scotland gets a grant directly from the Scottish Government to work with this, but our primary aim is supporting the material culture of museums and galleries. So I'm going to look a bit about kind of how this squares with our support for intangible cultural heritage more widely. Museums Galleries Scotland, we are a funder for museums and galleries, and we also kind of exist to provide advice and to create networks where possible. And in the intangible cultural heritage work that we're doing, we are really trying to foster a genuine role for museums and galleries in supporting spontaneous community expressions and community involvement, especially through using physical museum spaces and physical museum collections as resources for intangible culture and living heritage more widely. So just then to give a bit more context on the kind of Scotland-specific environment in which we're working. So here is a map of Scotland and the museums and galleries and kind of where they're distributed. In 2012, Museums Galleries Scotland became the first non-government organisation advisor to UNESCO within the UK. But of course the UK has not ratified the ICH Convention. So there's a slight kind of interesting dynamic there that we work obviously under the kind of main Westminster government, but we also have devolution within the UK. So Scotland is a devolved nation with its own government, Scottish government. And the Scottish government are very supportive of intangible cultural heritage, especially in relation to increasing ideas of place and community and things like that. And I think that's really where there's a strong role for the museums within this as well. We really want to support intangible cultural heritage through all of our existing networks. And as an organisation like Museums Galleries Scotland, the best network that we have is our museums and galleries, which are sort of dotted across the country. And I'll just point out here, if my thing works, or maybe it doesn't. Okay, you can see on the map some of the kind of the challenges geographically and the kind of cultural diversity that is within a really quite small country of 5.5 million people. So you can see that most of the museums and galleries are kind of clustered around the bottom there. And within Scotland, obviously, there's lots of islands. In many of the Western Isles, there's the strong Gaelic tradition, traditional minority language of Gaelic, and actually, I mean, that's spread throughout the country now, with increased representation in the cities. On the East Coast, you have the Scots culture, which is a particular language in its own right as well, and a kind of particular cultural understanding. You also have Highland culture and Lowland culture, urban and rural, and of course lots of the different kind of migrant groups that have settled in the country in more recent years as well, and going way back from, you know, there was strong Irish immigration about 200 years ago, right up to where I live in Leith in Edinburgh. There's really strong Ukrainian migration to that area, and all the kind of different cultural traditions that these groups bring with them can be supported through our museums and galleries. I'm just going to quickly show this just to reiterate kind of where our museums and galleries are. So this is a population density map, so you can see it's roughly reflective of this map here. You can just understand that as soon as you get north and west, it's very mountainous, and there's just not the same kind of population centres. But what this does mean is that almost every physical community can have a fantastic resource for heritage and for living heritage, which is the museums and galleries of that area. Just to look kind of policy-wise, I think that recently we've really increased how we support ICH in terms of the museums that we work with, but also in terms of the Scottish Government cultural plan. And we're really lucky that we are utilising the International Council of Museums definition, which has this kind of key idea of that museums research, collect, conserve, interpret and exhibit tangible and intangible heritage. And that's really important for us because as an organisation which mainly works with museums and galleries, it helps us to kind of get this point across that ICH is just as important as the material culture of museums and galleries. A big challenge that we come across is articulating this to the museum sector more widely as well. We've heard this a lot, but kind of the idea that museums and community groups might say, well, this is just a way of life. This is just fundamental to existence. Why is this a separate kind of ICH, like a cultural thing that needs an acronym or an initialism? And that's a difficult thing to overcome, but I think it's really fundamental to some of the conversations that we've had. And that's key to kind of the next thing that I want to talk about, which is how we dealt with this and how we really tried to reinvigorate an understanding of intangible cultural heritage, both across communities, but also across the museums and gallery sector more widely. As we saw kind of museums and communities reestablishing themselves after lockdown and COVID, we really wanted to have a year to kind of kick that off and re-energize conversations around this. So we have occasional themed years within Scotland, and 2022 was the themed year of Scotland Stories. And storytelling is obviously a really important aspect of intangible cultural heritage, and it's an important thing for our museums and galleries. So we were able to really utilise this themed year as a way of celebrating ICH in museums and reinforcing that idea that they're connected. We did this with funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, so it's funded by players of the lottery, and collaborated with Visit Scotland, which is a tourism body. So it was also about using ICH to promote tourism across the country. I'm just going to play a quick clip of a video which just highlights one particular storyteller and how they worked with an open-air museum called Auchendrain. And I want to include this as well because it's storytelling, but it was also using the Gaelic language, so you get an idea of the Gaelic language that's still a community spoken language in the country. Let's see if this works.
It's very important for me to tell the stories that belong to a girl in the dialect of the area in a place ancestors spent their time in. It's been a fantastic experience because I had a whole load of stories bouncing about in my head that I told to my kids and occasionally told a few gigs here and there. But
so it was a very short clip, but really, I really wanted to highlight that was one storyteller who was a professional storyteller, but he worked with communities to bring them into this open-air rural museum using the Gaelic language as well as a real spoken language that people were understanding. And just to highlight a few more examples through the Community Stories Fund that we were able to support, and we did this through our first ICH officer post as well, my colleague Peter, who was able to support this, which was brilliant. We talk very much about ICH in Scotland rather than Scottish ICH, so the idea that any group that settles in Scotland, their ICH is a national ICH. So this was a project looking at Gypsy, Roma and Traveller communities who shared storytelling but also music. And these are distinct communities, obviously, so there was a strong kind of intercultural aspect to that, but also lots of learning from each other, but also these aren't communities which are traditionally well represented in museum collections. And we want to use ICH as a tool for decolonising of museum spaces, but also decolonising of museum collections and kind of colonial era collecting practices. So this is a really important way of, I guess, filling in gaps of representation in museum collections through using intangible cultural heritage that otherwise will have been forgotten and not safeguarded. Similarly, we were able to use storytelling and cooking and kind of have a real social aspect through some of these projects. And just the final example is a really nice one, which is Gairloch Museum, which is a museum in the far northwest of mainland Scotland, in a very remote and rural part of the world. But they did this brilliant ceilidh, which is a traditional kind of often dance and music, but also a kind of storytelling and community event. They're the only museum for 50 miles in every direction as well. So there's a really disparate rural community base there which came together. And the museum literally became a front room for the community. They asked people to bring in kind of homely bits and bobs and just use the museum as a home space to come and tell stories. There was multiple languages there. Gaelic was used there as well. And for these rural communities, often there's no other community space. So the museum is a clear community resource, and it becomes a space through which ICH can be promoted and celebrated and used to bind communities together. And through all of this project, we were able to input onto our inventory. So every single project which was there was able to be uploaded as examples onto the inventory. And again, it's really kicked off this idea of safeguarding through community participation, using the museum as an established community resource, which has been really useful for us and the country. And just my final couple of slides, just to reiterate that from our point of view, museums and galleries are, I really think, really unique in their capacity to support intangible culture. And for us, helping to understand them as physical spaces for community ownership and community participation is really how that is done most appropriately. And thus ends my talk. But thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you. I hope after all this inspiration and very interesting presentations, you still have the energy for the last presentation. Last but not least, for sure, from our neighboring Germany, by Patricia Rijmipour. Patricia is director of the Institute for Museum Research at the Staatliche Museum zu Berlin, and she will tell more about her work. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, I have to drink something. And actually I can just stop talking because Jacob already said everything I wanted to say, but I keep it short and maybe you stay awake. Here we are. Well, right. I'm the director of the Institute of Museum Research, and we are doing a project which is called Materialization of the Immaterial. And what I'm going to tell you with that project is that we step a step back. We are not in the work with the communities at the moment, but we do it in other projects. But what we do in this project is to have this bird's eye perspective on how museums and intangible heritage fit together, because we hear very often that it doesn't fit together. And as we heard by Jacob, it fits together very well. I think so too, but we need data about that. Before I tell you something about the project, which is in this final phase at the moment, I tell you a little bit about the Institute to understand why we do such research. We were founded in 1979 and we are nationwide active. That is very important. We are founded from the nation, from the government, and I put it higher, maybe, like this? Yeah. We are founded by the government and we are part of a big museum collaboration, but we do work for all of the 7,000 museums in Germany, which is a really high amount of museums, and most of them, 60%, are very small museums. And so we do research for the small museums, especially to support them, to do formats they don't do without our help, and we try to conduct research with and about museums. That is very important. So we do it very hands-on together with them. We have focus points in our work, and I don't tell you everything about that, but what's very important for us is that we have topics on the one side we are dealing with, you see them on the left-hand side, and we have knowledge that we bring in. And what we can do is also data collection and evaluation, and that's the project I'm going to tell you about more in a minute. And we have a focus on intangible heritage for the next 5 years, which we found out in a strategic workshop with all the colleagues in the museums and in our institute. Yeah. There's a big project in Germany, it's called Museum 4.0, and this project is on digital formats in museums and how they transfer knowledge to pupils, to grown-ups, to youngsters, and everybody else. And the aims are development of digital offers for the new ways of learning, and also participating and experiencing in museums and doing using the codes for reusing, also for the small and the middle-sized museums. That is very important. And within this project, we have the materialization of the immaterial, and what we do is we are looking at what museums do have ICH in their collections? How do they collect? How do they provide the knowledge for the users, for the visitors in the museum, but also for the digital users? And we asked, what does that do to the immaterial cultural heritage? Because that is one of the obstacles I hear very often. Oh, well, you transfer it into the museum, you transfer it into a digital format, and right after that, it's not a living heritage anymore, it's dying. And so it's not very useful to have it in the museum. But we want to know, is that really like that? What are the formats they're using? Do they interact with the communities? Do they talk to them? Do they ask, how do you want to collect us your ICH, for example? And so we went on and spoke to 101 museums in Germany. That's a small amount on the first place, but we are just starting off with the project. 101 museums, and we had 2 colleagues doing the work, and one is a social anthropologist, which is quite usual for us, but the other one is a psychologist, because we not only wanted to gain the data from, we give you a questionnaire and after that we stop everything. We wanted to have deep interviews, we wanted to have interaction with them, we wanted to build with them workshops and work together with the museums, not with the practitioners, only with the museums at that first site. Did I say everything? Just have to look. Yeah, and then maybe to the final thing that is important also, because we have we are providing a website which is almost finished. It will be published, I think, in 6 weeks on ICH and museums in Germany from that survey and what it did to the museums, to the practitioners and everything. And it's a growing website, so everybody can bring in their information if they want to, and there will also be a second phase of the whole project where we ask more museums and find out how they deal with ICH. Yeah, here are the first insights on the on this survey we conducted, and well, actually. We have the first results because we weren't, and we weren't sure if we can publish them already yet. But because you have to look at that very, very narrow. You see it here. ICH is part of the museum collections, and then you see objects. What objects? We are talking about intangible heritage. But that is what the museums told us that the practitioners gave to them. And they said, that's part of our work, and we want to have it in the museum, and we want to add stories to that. So the museums of the 101, they have 87 objects. They also have written documents, 78. That is what we saw in a former presentation also that by Agatha. It's very important to have also the written documents that people describe what they are doing and why they are doing it. And you see the generational work also. And they also have audiovisual recordings. It's a number of 69, and they are digital 42, and that is something. Yeah, it can be provided in a different way, not only audiovisual, and they have other collections in the museum. So, if you have a look at that 100%, and you see that the digital offers is by 12%, and 52 is the collection of stories. That is very interesting here. And 36 is the collection of pictures. So it's something that you don't expect in the museum. And here you have the range of the formats that the museums get and how they use and how they provide the ICH for their visitors. And so you have the collection on the one hand, and then you have how do I provide that for the visitors, and how do I transfer the information about our ICH to the visitors in the museum itself. And that is really diverse. And I didn't translate that, but you have media stations and media guides, which is very expectable, I think. But you also have tutorials, you have homepages that they give on, and a lot of communities said they want to have this Facebook link, nothing more, just the Facebook link, and that is enough for me to be in the museum. So, digital education and communication. We see we have an access to the information and to the objects of immaterial cultural heritage in the museum, also in and outside of the museum. The people access it from both sides, so it's very important for them. You have formats that are on the spot, which means in the museums themselves, but also they're going out to the so-called third spaces, which is very important, and they use a lot social media, YouTube. I already mentioned Facebook, which is more interesting for the elder people because they like using Facebook a lot more than they use other social media, as we experienced, and the using is usually on their own of the individual visitor, but also in a group of visitors. And then we have a lot of information about what are the educational aims in the museums and so on and so forth. And here we have another slide and information about, and I think that is really interesting, what is the interaction between the users and the device. So what are the visitors really doing in the museum? Do they relive it? Do they participate with that? Do they keep that living heritage, in a way living. And we have to dive in here a little bit deeper. As I said, it's only the first slides of the information we just got from the museums, but I think it's really rewarding because we really think that the museums can be a multiplier for ICH, and the museums can help them, and vice versa. It's very important because a lot of information in the objects cannot be found out if you don't have the ICH and the usage of the object and the function. So both need to go together and interact to be a whole in a way. Thank you very much.
So, are there any questions after these four last presentation or to any of our presenters of today?
So, thank you all for your lovely presentations. I was triggered especially by the national plan of Spain and the work that you're doing in Belgium. And I was thinking, like, from the international perspective, if we're looking at it, like, and we're here now in the Netherlands, and thank you also for having all of us here. Like, from a perspective, we're doing all of these things in our own little countries or bigger countries, and at the same time, we have a lot of synergy. So Spain this year will be taking on the presidency of the EU, and then the next year, first half of 2024, to Belgium. So how will you be passing on the knowledge and trying to also bring this up to a more pan-European stage, which I believe could be very rewarding to learn from each other and also from our differences, but also from what we have in common. So I was wondering if you already thought of something like this and how if we're thinking of how we can translate our experiences more broadly in fora like this today, but also maybe more generally. So the question is for Belgium and Spain. 12 points.
A question about the European aspect. So how are Spain and Belgium that will take on the presidency of the EU soon? How will they pass on their knowledge about ICH internationally?
Well, we're making an activity within the framework of the national plan about, I don't know how to say it in English, the structures, elevated structures to put the grain in and to conserve the grain in the fields, which are very useful and useful in the north of Spain. You know, in Asturias and Galicia, they're called hórreos. I don't know if this word says something for you, but it's a model not only in the north of Spain, but in many other places in Europe, for example, Portugal, Croatia, Slovenia, and we're making a professional meeting in the north of Spain with some, visits to some hórreos to make, an exchange of experiences of conservation and reusing these structures. And, I think the European point of view of these assets can enrich the ways of safeguarding that, and in that case, in their very huge amounts of hórreos, I don't know, 50,000 in Asturias and 20,000 in Galicia or so. There are so many to conserve, and of course the knowledge associated to the material assets. And this will be one of our celebrations of the President's Community. Yeah, you're welcome.
Just a small addition from the Belgian side. I think that when our time comes to be president, I think that the political parties involved will definitely work something out. I'm sure that they will, because we think that international exchange is very important. We already do so, I think, by being here this week, for example. So we try to make the most out of it, and there are already some extra ideas of how we can collaborate together. So I think there's a lot more potential in that. But from my side of the heritage work, what I do with the communities, we always encourage them to also look further away than just Belgium. Like I said, there are some networks already with the communities which are not just Flanders or Belgium, but also include the Netherlands or other European countries. So I think we're already to a great start, and there's only the only way is up or something like that. So yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, go on with the international collaborations, I would say. Any more urgent questions now?
Well, Patricia and Jacob, you work in sort of the same organization, but in Germany you have the treaty that is ratified, but in Scotland not. Could you maybe reflect on what are consequences of the treaty or the convention for the countries? What if you would ratify and what if you would not have did it? So is it helpful, is it not?
A question about the difference between Scotland and Germany on ratifying, that's the word, ratifying the UNESCO Convention on ICH. First of all, Scotland.
Yeah, thank you. On behalf of the entire country, no, I should say that I should make clear I'm not involved in conversations around this particularly, but I know that there was reluctance from a UK-wide point of view to ratify this. I think for several reasons, but primarily I think some worry over what the wider implication would be in terms of if it would be creating more work, things like this, and if already there was good support networks in existence to support ICH without that needing to necessarily be ratified. And I think that is true. I think there are fantastic organisations, UK-wide as well as within Scotland, Scotland specific, which do a great job of safeguarding and promoting ICH. But maybe just don't use that language, and I think that's true. We've heard that a lot this week, and I think that's true in many countries. And I think it's been a fundamental thing. I mean, certainly looking at, for example, the state of traditional music in Scotland. I mean, it's really healthy. It's touch wood, and it's really a fundamental part of modern life. At many pubs you go to, you'll hear traditional music in and things like this. And I think there's an idea that keeps it spontaneous without a need to necessarily formalise that. However, I know that there are conversations, very real conversations, ongoing around ratification and if it's possible. And I find the conversations very exciting. But that's all I can say.
Yeah. Oh. Hi, I'm Patricia, and we did it. Well, actually, I think it helped a lot. It really helped a lot. Culture is a federal thing in Germany, and there were a lot of people doing a lot in ICH communities, and they were inventorizing, but they were doing very locally. And for example, the institute I work for, we only can help and support when it's ratified, because we are funded by the Bund, and so if we do something for the whole country, we also have to have the argument for doing it. So it eased the work in a way, and I think if you watch the landscape in Germany of that, what was inventorized and people talking about ICH and so on since 2003, really increased a lot, and not only because the people became interested in it, but also because they had the political support in a way. So do it.
I think we'll leave the other questions, if there are any, to the networking drinks. I would like to thank, first of all, our speakers, the visitors that have thanked us so wholeheartedly all at the beginnings of their presentation, but now I would like to thank them for giving their presentations and sharing their work from 7 corners of Europe with us today. And I would like to thank you for all being here, and of course the people online that have tuned in from different countries worldwide. yeah, for me it was a lot of inspiration. Personally, I'm not even working with communities or with the visibility of ICH myself, but still I'm very inspired, and I think what came across mostly was the joy that you all have in working with communities, working with ICH, and practicing it sometimes even. So yeah, that gave a really positive vibe to this afternoon. I would like to take the opportunity, because we talked about international collaboration, to share the European Heritage Program of Dutch Culture with you, which I'm managing, and we do have some grants available, a grant scheme and a travel grant scheme that you can apply to set up any international collaborations in the field of heritage in Europe. So as a Dutch-based organization or professional in the field of heritage, you can apply for that. So have a look. To invite you for a drink at the back of this room. We will be here for another hour at least. So I'm looking forward to talking to you. Thank you. And thanks to you.